All right, our next topic of discussion is going to be what's called the current wars, okay? As in currents of electricity. So is it going to be AC or DC? Okay? And yeah, by the way, the band name is actually named after electricity. So AC means alternating current, which means the current bounces back and forth on the line. DC is direct current, like you find in batteries, okay? So the current only flows in one direction. They had two competing thoughts here. Now, DC was the original mode of power, okay? The guy that you're gonna have to really concentrate on here is Thomas Edison, okay? One of the people here. Thomas Edison is a brilliant inventor. He invented so many things. He has over 100 patents, you know, that kind of stuff. But the thing is, his most famous invention is the incandescent light bulb, which is shown right here. This is Thomas Edison, okay? So an incandescent bulb has two little poles and a filament or a little wire that goes across the top, and you light it up with electricity. It glows, okay? Now, he tried something like 10,000 different types of filaments until he found the right way to make a light bulb. All right, so 1882, he invents the light bulb. He then builds the first large-scale electric power plant in New York City, okay, to power his light bulbs. Now, one thing that Edison realized, okay, is that wiring up your entire house, an existing house, or even a new house, is a costly affair, especially for an older house, because you have to rip open walls, you have to fish wires, you have to do all this stuff. It was exceedingly expensive, okay? And they already had kerosene lanterns. So many people in America did not really care whenever Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, because it was useless without wiring up your house. So Edison said, if I'm gonna make this electricity thing viable as a business, it needs to be about the electricity and not about the light bulb, okay? So Edison creates the first research laboratory to develop uses for electricity. In other words, y'all, one invention is not enough to make you want to power up your whole house. But what if we can give you 100 electric inventions? Okay, so what this research laboratory basically did was they said, okay, here's an item. Let's say a stove. Can we make a gas burning stove and electric stove? Yes, we could do that. So let's figure out how to do it. Now we got the light bulb plus the stove. Well, what about the washing machine? What about the dryer? Think about how many electronic devices you have at your house, okay? Think about that seriously, okay? Try to count them up in your head. How many things at your house runs off of electricity? Now it's worth to power up your house. You see what I'm saying? So that's what the research laboratory was for. So while he was doing this, he actually employed a young recent immigrant named Nikola Tesla. Now, Tesla was absolutely brilliant. Edison was brilliant, but not like Tesla, okay? So Tesla comes along, and Thomas Edison tells him, if you can get me a working DC power plant, I'll give you $20,000, okay? So Nikola Tesla builds this first DC power plant for New York, amongst other things he did with Edison. But he told Thomas Edison something. He said, DC power is not the way of the future. Because just because the power goes from one side to the other and doesn't bounce back to the power source, that means you're losing much power. In fact, Tesla says that there's a new form of electricity that he's been working on called AC, where the power bounces back and forth, and therefore it can go about 200 times the distance without actually losing enough power to make a difference. So it's literally 200 times more efficient, okay? Well, eventually, Edison gets angry at the young immigrant and says, look, I'm the big dog here. I'm the top inventor. You don't know what you're doing. Just shut your mouth and build my generator. So he does. Okay, Tesla builds the generator, and he goes to Edison for the bonus. And Edison starts laughing at him and said, that was just a joke. I was never going to pay you that. So Nikola Tesla is infuriated, and he quits Thomas Edison's business, and he goes to start his own using AC current. And now we have a full-fledged current war between the two awesome inventors. Okay? All right, Thomas Edison used direct current. Nikola Tesla, an angry former employee, developed alternating current. So, y'all, Tesla was a genius. Okay, this guy created so many patents you wouldn't even understand, so many inventions. You can look up a list of them on Wikipedia if you like. I'm going to go over a few of the more interesting ones, okay? This right here is called the Tesla death ray. All right, so the idea was that he was going to build this massive tower that could shoot lightning bolts at ships up to 200 miles away, okay, and sink ships. Now, the idea was that he was going to sell the idea to the United States government, and the U.S. government was going to put these towers all along the border of the United States. And any army that came to attack them, or any navy that came to attack them, we could simply blow them out of the water, or hit them from land if they're coming in from Mexico or Canada, and destroy them. But it turns out it was too expensive, and the United States turned them down. So he only got one of them working, and yes, it did work. Okay, it literally shot lightning bolts that fried things. The next thing we're going to talk about is something you've probably seen before. Okay, so have you ever been to, let's say, Spencer's or even Walmart at a certain time of the year? They have these glass balls, and there's a metal ball in the middle, and it's shooting out electricity everywhere, right? And when you put your hand on the glass ball, the electricity goes towards your hand, okay? That's actually called a Tesla coil. That's what this is. Now, this is an actual colorized photograph of a gigantic Tesla coil from his Colorado laboratory. Now, if you look here, you have millions of volts of electricity, okay, shooting into these copper grounding rods that are going into the ground. And Nikola Tesla is sitting in the middle of it. Basically, he's not scared because he knows the science behind it, okay? So he knows that the electricity shooting out of the ball would rather hit these copper grounding rods than him. Plus, the entire floor has chain link fence all over it, and it's grounded to the grounding rods. So even if the electricity would hit him, then Tesla would be not harmed at all. The electricity would harmlessly pass through his feet and go to the grounding rod. This picture caused a big stir whenever it was published in the newspaper. Okay, other things that he also invented. Okay, he invented the radio. Okay, actually he never patented it, so a guy named Marconi got the credit for that one. He invents also the induction motor. Okay, which is the electric motor. Y'all, this is in almost every motorized electric device on the planet. Okay, cordless drill, corded drill, circular saws, your hair dryer, any of these things that use a motor inside of an electric device uses an electric induction motor. That was roughly invented by Tesla. One of my favorites is this thing right here. Okay, it's called the oscillator. Okay, which means it moves back and forth. Tesla called it the earthquake machine. Okay, now what Tesla figured out is that you can actually, every item on Earth has a resonant frequency. Okay, resonance means it vibrates. So at a certain frequency of sound, any object on Earth will vibrate. You just got to find the frequency, and then it'll start to hum. And then you turn up the volume, and it'll start to shake pretty badly. Okay. You've probably seen on television, there's a picture of a glass, like a champagne glass, and some lady's singing, and she goes up really high, and at a certain note, the glass breaks, right? That's because her voice has actually hit the resonant frequency of glass, and because of the volume, which is the intensity of it, it makes it shatter, it makes it shake until it shakes itself apart. Well, late one night, Tesla took this thing, basically all it was, y'all, it was a speaker, and it had two knobs on it. One of them was to control the frequency of the pitch, so it could be really high or really low, and anywhere in between. And the other knob was for volume. So he goes and sneaks into a skyscraper that's being built in Manhattan, in New York City. Now, nobody's there. It's at night, like I said. The workers are all gone. And he goes right to the center of the skyscraper. And he turns on his oscillator, his earthquake machine. And he starts messing with the frequency. He's going up and down. And at a certain frequency, all the steel beams in the skyscraper start to vibrate and hum. Okay? And so he's found now the resonant frequency for steel. And so he starts cranking up the volume. And after, he said he had to turn it off after about 10 minutes because he thought the whole building was going to collapse on his head. So literally, y'all, this little device, it was probably this big, could have literally brought down a skyscraper. And that's a pretty powerful tool. Can you imagine if terrorists would ever get a hold of this technology and go in the bathroom of a plane? I mean, they wouldn't even have to bring a bomb. They would just bring the oscillator with them, shake the plane apart. Anyway, so what happened in the current wars? What's the outcome? That's multiple choice question 13, okay? Both of these guys had very rich benefactors, very rich guys that were backing them up, okay? So Tesla was financed by a guy named George Westinghouse, this guy right here. This is the guy that invented air brakes for trains and a bunch of other stuff, but he had millions of dollars and he threw his money behind Tesla, okay? He believed in alternating current. While Thomas Edison was backed by a robber baron named J.P. Morgan, okay? John Piers Morgan, okay? John's Piermont Morgan. Anyway, J.P. Morgan, if you remember from the definitions, he's our robber baron, that's the banker, okay? He's using other people's money to make a bunch of money. So we've got AC current versus DC current. We've got Tesla versus Edison, okay? Which is effectively also going to be Westinghouse versus J.P. Morgan, okay? All right, so it all came down to which one was going to be more efficient. In 1893, they had the Chicago's World Fair. All right, the World's Fair is an old tradition. It goes back a long time. And basically what it does is this is like a convention where you unleash your technology upon the world. This is where you introduce things. You know, things like the television were introduced at the World's Fair. Not this one. That was much later on. The radio was introduced there. You know, cars, things like that. So this is the future fair, you know. So anyway, they wanted to light up the Chicago's World Fair. They wanted Chicago's World Fair to be spectacular. They wanted to have it at night, which before was impossible. You always had the World's Fair during the day so you can see. But since these two titans of electricity are both electrifying America, they want to see which one can do it. So both men, Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, made a bid to see who could light up the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. Well, Edison gave the real price, which turns out to be about $10,000, okay? And Nikola Tesla intentionally took a loss. He said, I'll do it for $5,000. So he did it for half the price, and he won the bid. Now, this is a serious mistake on the part of Edison, because this was a massive triumph for George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla. Because the next day, in every newspaper in the world, it showed pictures of the electric light bulb that was actually invented by Tesla. Now, that's another story. After Tesla wins the bid, but before he does the job, he goes to Thomas Edison and says, you know, I need a few thousand light bulbs for this show, for this Chicago's World Fair. And Thomas Edison basically stuck him the finger and said, go make your own light bulb. So Tesla said, okay. So he walked across the street from that meeting, sat down at a diner. That's what the story is anyway. He got a napkin and a pen, and within 2 hours, he invented a completely new kind of light bulb called a fluorescent light bulb. That is the number one difference between Tesla and Edison. Okay, both are brilliant. Edison had to spend 10,000 different tries to get a working light bulb. Nikola Tesla had a working light bulb designed within 2 hours on his first try. So anyway, these are not incandescent bulbs lighting up the World's Fair. That's actually fluorescent bulbs, which is what you're used to. All right, so after the Chicago World's Fair, J.P. Morgan is furious at Thomas Edison for letting that opportunity slip through their fingers. And they were losing the current war. So what they did is they went on a smear campaign. In other words, we have to convince the world that Nikola Tesla's AC power is so dangerous that you would never want it in your household. So they did a series of events to prove that. The first thing is Topsy the elephant, okay? So this is Topsy the elephant right here, okay? Topsy was an older blind elephant, okay, pretty much blind. And at a circus show, she got spooked by a bunch of kids and she trampled them. She killed 3 or 4 of them. And if you know anything about circuses, y'all, if an animal kills a human in a circus, that animal's pretty much just signed their own death warrant. So they got Topsy the elephant. This is the actual photograph. This is just a poster. But by the way, you can look up the video. I don't know if they have it on YouTube. Sometimes they take it down because it's an animal execution. But ask your parents for permission. And you can see Topsy. She's actually wired with a bunch of copper wires. And then they hit the switch. And she tenses up like that. And then she falls over dead after a couple of seconds. And I think there's a little bit of smoke coming out of her. Now, the story in the newspaper was supposed to read that Topsy the elephant got fried by Nikola Tesla's AC power because it was so dangerous. But the newspapers thought that the bigger story was that Thomas Edison electrocuted an elephant to death. And that's how they posted it in the paper. So they say Thomas Edison fried an elephant, right? Well, that made him look horrible. There was, in many of the cases, the idea that it was AC current that fried the elephant was buried deep down in the story, if it was even there at all. So again, J.P. Morgan is furious that this has backfired. He's risking millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to get this enterprise off the ground. And they've just had their second big failure. First, the Chicago World's Fair, then Topsy the elephant. So J.P. Morgan pulls Thomas Edison in his office and he says, you got to do it again and you got to do it right this time. So Thomas Edison goes back to the drawing board to prove how dangerous Nikola Tesla's AC power is. And he comes up with a new invention called the electric chair. Okay? So they also called it Old Smoky after this one. So anyway, kind of getting ahead of myself. So he invents the electric chair and he gets a volunteer from a local prison in New York to actually volunteer. Now he tells the prisoner this is going to be painless. Okay, it's going to be like a light switch going out, you're going to be dead. So it sounds better than a hanging or a firing squad, right? So he invites all the media. So there's like 40 or 50 reporters there, okay? Stuff like that. There's cameras there. That's where this picture's from, actually. This is the first guy ever executed by electricity. And the guy is sitting in the middle of the room. The press is all behind. And Thomas Edison comes out, and he tells the reporters, now listen up. You guys got to get it right this time because you butchered the story last time, okay? He said, we are using Nikola Tesla's AC power. Write that down. Okay? And this is to prove how dangerous it is compared to DC power. Now that needs to be put in your story. Do y'all all understand? And you know, everybody's like, yeah, sure. Okay? So the warden gives the order to pull the switch or flip the switch, and this guy fried, okay? Literally. So immediately the man starts shaking and screaming in pain. Okay, and his skin was smoking. The whole room was filling with this smell of burning human flesh. His hair was actually catching on fire in certain places. And the grand finale was whenever his eyeballs actually boiled and busted while he was still alive and ran down his face as he was using the restroom all over himself. The media starts throwing up, some of the media starts throwing up. And guess what they put in the paper the next day? Man, Thomas Edison fried this dude. Okay, his eyeballs busted all over the place, and the room was stinking. People were throwing up. You know what they forgot to put in the story? That this was Nikola Tesla's AC power. So for the third time, their plan backfired on them, and basically made Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan look horrible again. Now, in the end, Tesla won the current wars. This is the focus of the question, y'all. This is the answer on the test. Tesla won the current war because AC power can be shipped over greater distances without losing its charge. That means that you have to have 200 times less power stations. If the power could go 200 times farther without a boost, without a relay station or a new power plant, you literally have to build 200 times less power stations. Okay? So that is a massive difference in cost. That makes Tesla's AC power much cheaper to produce. Okay? So that is the end of the AC DC power struggle.